Well, I'm glad you could come back to the show, Rachel.
Oh, glad to be here.
And you're so professional sounding. You put on your customer service voice a little bit when you're podcasting. You notice that?
Just a little bit.
Just a smidgen?
Yeah.
But no, I wanted to make sure that it was comfy and cozy in here, so I have the air conditioning properly venting.
Ooh.
For the first time ever in the studio. It's actually
nice.
Reasonably cool in here. I wanted to make sure that we were, cozy. The chairs, you've got a new seat to sit on. We've got ice cold beverages because I want to be the host. Which is why there is a giant monster right above your head, right up there.
Oh, God, I didn't notice it at first.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah. Otherwise, people would run.
Oh, God. How many limbs does it have?
That's a good question. I'll ask and circle back around.
This podcast is about why horror scares us. What deep, dark secrets scary cinema shines a light on. The discussions are frank and involve conversations about abuse, trauma, and mental health. There are also spoilers, so keep that in mind too. Now, sharpen your machetes and straight razors, because this is Cutting Deep into Horror.
Welcome back to Cutting Deep into Horror, my friends. I am your host, Enrique Couto, here with my co-host,
Rachel Rodolphi.
Oh, she said her name herself. Okay, good. That way I didn't have to say it wrong.
I like to feel like a big shot.
Right. Well, I mean, you're becoming, it's upsetting. You're becoming a broadcast professional before my eyes.
You're doing this to me. I learned it by watching you.
Oh, now you're pulling the drug commercial dad thing on me? Okay. No, that's fair. Well, tonight we have a special movie choice, although all the movies are special because they are chosen very specifically. Because I want to make it clear, this isn't a movie review show. This is a movie appreciation show for very specific films that are worth cutting deep into, for lack of a better term. Or actually, well, I mean, after a lot of thought, that was the best possible term.
For exactly that term.
Yeah. So, but this one is from 2006, The Host. And you want to give us a little rundown on The Host? I had not seen this movie. This was your idea to bring to us.
Well, and that's what was so exciting about this episode in particular is this was the first movie that I saw it way before you did.
Well, I saw it like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So yes.
And I saw this in 2007, like shortly after it came, it was released on DVD. And so it was surprising when, we'd been talking and I had mentioned The Host and you said you hadn't seen it. And I was like, oh my God, really? Like, this is the perfect movie for you. I don't understand how you've never seen this.
I mean, I can tell you that I was very aware of the film's existence because I worked in my first job ever in show business was in marketing at a distribution company. And we would travel the country to expos and conventions, and not just in Canada too. And we almost went to Edinburgh once, but then we didn't get accepted to the film festival or whatever it was. But anyway, It's fine. Those people get what they deserve. But
it's their loss.
But no, this film, The Host, which came out in 2007, was made in Korea. You've skipped all of the pertinent details, so I'll fill those in. It was made in Korea, but when it was made and got picked up for American distribution, it was picked up by Magnet Entertainment, a subsidiary of Magnolia Home Entertainment, which is at the time, I believe, and may still be, was partially owned by Mark Cuban. It was his like indie movie label. They put out a lot of films I like Murder Party. That's a big one they did. They did Murder Party, which is a phenomenally fun movie.
So good.
And The Host was like their big release. That and Jesus Camp, the documentary about Jesus Camp.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but those were their two big ones. So I, traveling the country 11, 12 times a year, going to conventions and stuff, I would see posters for The Host everywhere, constantly. But I never got but it wasn't available yet. This was them getting the word out to go see it theatrically, and then to buy the DVD, which I just never got around to doing. And knowing me, because I was 19 years old at the time, So I probably would get ready to rent it at Blockbuster and then be like, oh, it's got subtitles. Well, it took me a while to get confident enough that I could read subtitles and still follow the action. I know a lot of people like to joke like, oh, well, some people are just not, they're too uncivilized. They don't want to read closed captions, or not closed captions, but subtitles. And I get that judgment element. But some of it comes down to the fact that some people are terrified that they're not going to get the experience because they're too busy reading to witness the action. And you watch enough movies with subtitles and you kind of realize that you can read really fast because you're not really even reading.
Right.
You're just kind of recognizing like 3 or 4 letters and then just making it up in your own head. And honestly, that's probably better for the filmmakers too. So,
what they should start doing is just making sure that the subtitles are just the first 3 or 4 letters, and then save money on the subtitling.
I mean, there are worse decisions I've heard of making. So, but yeah. So anyway, but that was my experience. I saw the poster a billion times. I mean, just again and again and again and again and again. And I remember it being promoted, that in Jesus Camp. I saw that poster again and again and again. But I'd actually seen Jesus Camp because I was a very outspoken atheist podcaster at the time.
Yeah, so you kind of had to.
Yeah.
Research.
The funny thing was the guy who was working at Magnolia at the time, who I do not know his name, he might have been an intern, he and I had a hilarious exchange about Jesus Camp that was not what he was hoping. Because he was like, yeah, scariest movie you have is Jesus Camp. And I was like, I don't know, I think that's going to be the kind of movie that like, those kids are going to grow up and then they're going to watch that and then they're going to be like, wow, I don't believe this stuff anymore. And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. We're just going to go backwards for the first time ever in human history. And sure enough, evangelicalism is way, way down in this country. And it's because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
And other things. But anyway, that's not what this show's about. The show is about the host, and it is directed by, his name was, speaking of confidence, I'm always afraid I'll say his name wrong. Bong Joon-ho, who is famous, world famous for making Parasite recently.
Yeah.
Which is a phenomenal movie that I saw when it was in the theater, and I was blown away. Although the title made it sound like it was going to be a horror movie.
And it was not.
I mean, no.
No.
No, it was just an intense drama.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what, when I first saw The Host, because like I said, I saw it when it first came onto DVD, because that's my Hollywood video days. So that was one of the movies that I made a point of, like when it came out, I had to see it. And what struck me is it's not so much a monster movie or a horror movie per se, as much as being like a dark comedy and a family drama.
I'm going to have to disagree to some extent.
Okay.
I think that in order for a film to be a dark comedy, it has to be consistently funny. The movie has great humor.
Yeah,
but I think it's just to break tension. I think the movie is a like family drama and a monster movie.
Yeah.
I really do, and a political drama to an extent, sort of.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not trying to poo-poo on your point, but I wouldn't call it a dark comedy because it's just the point isn't to laugh.
No, you're very right, because there are several moments in the movie that are just so absurd that it becomes hilarious.
Oh, the movie's laugh out loud funny in some points, just like Parasite was as well. And Snowpiercer, which is another phenomenal movie this guy's made. Mm-hmm. So, and so all of this to say, when you mentioned the movie and I realized that I had not seen it, at all, I was down to watch it.
Yeah.
And it was available. I always like to try and remember to mention where it's available, the films we're talking about, in case you want to stop listening and watch it and then come back. I was able to find it on Max, or the former HBO Max.
Okay.
Just sitting there, all, hanging out there, all pink and naked. So that's a good place to watch it. You could also rent it wherever you like to rent movies. But, so you said you saw this during your Hollywood video days?
Yep.
Okay. And you were just blown away?
Oh, absolutely blown away. I think because I rented it for a weekend and I think I watched it twice. Because like the first time I was like, oh, wow, this is so good. So like before I took it back.
And the second time was sober. But no, that's awesome. And definitely would be a surprise.
Yeah.
I know we keep going back to like other things, but like that's how Murder Party was. I rented that on a Friday night at Blockbuster. And I watched it like 2 more times that weekend before I returned it on Monday. So, I mean, every now and then you discover an incredible movie.
Yeah.
And you're just blown away. And nowadays, it's it's weird. It's less special, but more because it's more common. Thanks to streaming, I feel like we're used to finding movies that we'd never heard much about and then going, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But back then, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
You know, you were like, holy moly.
Yeah, it was always kind of a gamble.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That was my favorite thing. I liked the gamble. I used to joke on Friday nights or on Saturday nights. I used to go to Blockbuster and I would try to pick the film with the most unshamed, like shameless. That's the phrase. The most shameless photoshopping. Like you'd look at it and go, almost none of this existed in reality. And that's what I would rent.
Yeah.
And that's how you get movies worth watching with 2 cheeseburgers on a Saturday night.
Yep.
But this film is definitely beyond a movie to watch with 2 cheeseburgers on a Saturday night. This is a harrowing tale. So I'm going to put it to you.
Okay.
You want to tell us, give us a basic rundown of what the film's about?
So what the film is about the Park family, which is the grandpa and the oldest son who has a daughter who's about 12. And then there's another brother and a sister. And they're a very dysfunctional family, but they're a very loving family. And through happenstance, the little girl gets kidnapped by this mutant monster thing.
Out of the, what river was that?
The Han River.
The Han River in South Korea. Because the film is Korean, and of course that means it took place in South Korea.
Yes.
Because otherwise Kim Jong-un would have been the hero of the film. And it would have been very different in every possible
very,
way.
very different film. And much more scary for very different reasons.
My God, yeah. Just thinking about it's making me uncomfortable.
So, the little girl, Hyun-so, gets kidnapped by this monster. And so this family that, again, they're very dysfunctional, but they all clearly love each other a lot. And they love this little girl a lot. So they have to...
She's kind of a glue to the family.
She holds the family together.
The grandpa is the literal glue, but she's kind of like, I don't know the exact word. She's like a catalyst for a lot of love.
She's kind of
care.
everyone's motivation.
That's a perfect way to put it. Although I think catalyst means that.
Kind of.
You went to college. Whatever.
So as this family has to try to get their little girl back. And it, like you said, there is a little bit of a political undertones to it, because the way that the movie starts out is there's an American scientist talking to a South Korean scientist.
Were they scientists? I thought they were doctors.
They could be doctors.
Okay, to me, it looked like they were doctors.
They may have been doctors. And it doesn't quite matter for the movie. All you know is they're trained medical personnel.
Yeah,
of some
they're wearing
sort.
lab coats and gloves.
Yeah, and
some people might recognize. I cannot remember that actor's name, but
you got so excited.
The
about
white
him,
guy at the beginning is, it's Scott Wilson, who is famous for being Herschel on The Walking Dead.
Oh, cool.
And it says that he was a U.S., according to Wikipedia, so how could it be wrong, that it refers to his role as a U.S. military doctor.
Okay, so it is doctor.
Well, I mean, the U.S. has got plenty of bases all over the world.
Well, and especially in South Korea.
Well, sure.
But anyway, so the movie opens with these 2 doctors, and the American doctor is complaining about how filthy these bottles of formaldehyde are.
Yep.
And so he says, like, okay, well, I need you to dump all of these down the drain. And the Korean doctor says, like, this goes straight into the Han River. And he's like, oh, it's fine. Just dump all these bottles. And it's this great reveal because it kind of pans over and you see bottle after bottle of formaldehyde.
Yeah,
and then as it goes back and you see more and more bottles.
Yeah, they reveal that we're talking about, like, because he mentions, like, the river's big, who cares? Mm-hmm. And then it reveals that there's, like, 80 bottles?
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, like
gallons
100.
and gallons of formaldehyde. That's a lot. That's more than I got on me.
So that's just a brilliant opening scene. And I think that's one of the things that really caught me about this movie is Joon-ho is just masterful at telling a story by showing and not telling. And this is a great example. This movie is a great example of that. So after that opening scene, there's 2 fishermen in the Han River. and they catch a weird looking fish, and they're sitting there talking about it like, wow, this.
Well, they don't even catch it with a hook. They catch it in a cup. Like it's like a tadpole size thing, and they never show it to us.
No, it's great because then you get to just imagine what they're talking
but then
about.
They say things to fuck with you too. They're like, oh, this thing is like, how many tails does it have? I don't know. They're like saying all this stuff and you never see it.
Exactly.
Which I enjoyed. That little theater of the mind kind of gig.
Oh, I loved it. And then the next scene is supposed to be like months and months later. So this is all going on over the course of, several years. And the next scene is there's a guy who's clearly getting ready to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge. And his friends are like running down the street to stop him. And he's sitting there just kind of pontificating life in the rain and looking down in the Han River. And right as his friends catch up to him, he says something about, how futile the meaning of life is and all that, and being very melodramatic. And then he's like, do you see something down there in the river? And then just jumps off the bridge. And then that's the start of the movie. So the three opening scenes do a really good job of getting your curiosity going and getting your imagination going. But it doesn't actually tell you what the movie is really about, because then we meet the Park family and it's like, oh, this is actually a family drama.
Well, and for the record, see, if this had been a dark comedy, before he jumped off the bridge with his friends begging him not to, he would have said, hey, how do you keep an idiot in suspense? And they'd be like, I don't know. And then he'd jump in and die. That would be the dark comedy version.
That would be it.
You're welcome. But no. So now we meet the Park family.
Mm-hmm.
And we're introduced to them. And they're what I would call a somewhat typical Korean family in some ways. Mm-hmm. They're the patriarch of the there's no mothers.
Yeah.
That's something that's very odd, an interesting choice in this film, is there's like no mothers. I don't know if they even reference what happened to the mother of the grandmother.
Yeah, they don't mention what happened to the grandmother. They do briefly mention what happened to Hyun-soo's mom.
That she just ran off as soon as she was born. Yeah, she ran off, but they don't really reference why there's like no mother figure around.
No.
But so the patriarch of the family, Grandpa, he owns a convenience stand by the river. And they sell, cup ramen and fry up little squid thingies and, just like general, service. And we meet, you're going to have to help me with these names.
Gangdu.
Gangdu. That's the father
dad
of the little, yeah. And he is without a doubt a slacker.
Oh, absolutely.
He's kind of sort of sleepwalking through life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not entirely, but often.
Yeah.
And he's a loser. He oversleeps. He takes things from the customers and eats them and stuff. There's just all these like things about him.
Yeah. Well, but what I love is how quickly they set up that Hyun-soo's she's the motivation for the whole family, but especially for Gangdu, because I love they're opening up and he's literally sleeping at the counter.
Yeah.
And he's like, his dad even lifts his head up to get change out from under his head and then just kind of unceremoniously like drops
Lets him thud back down. Yeah.
And he doesn't wake up, but then he hears a little girl calling for her dad. And he immediately jumps up and Hyun-soo, he's like looking for his daughter. So you immediately get the sense that she is his world and she is his everything. It's just he doesn't have his shit together. So
yeah, not even a little bit.
not at all.
And then they, if I'm remembering correctly, they go into the store, the back room of the store, because her aunt, the father's sister, is on ESPN because she's doing archery on the Olympics.
Yeah, it's like she's like part of the national archery team.
Yeah.
And I just loved that scene because there's a few things, because the daughter, Hyun-soo, had mentioned how much she hated the phone that she had. And,
yeah, because it was so old.
It was so old and it was like just worthless and it could hardly make phone calls anyway. And Gangdu like tells her like, oh, well, I've been saving all this money. And he shows her and it's just like, all this change that he's collected.
In an old ramen cup.
But your heart breaks because, like, he's really trying.
Yeah. He's kind of a kid himself.
Yeah.
And it is heartbreaking. Especially when you realize that, like, his sister's off being an Olympian and his brother is a successful businessman. Mm-hmm. And then here he is. And he's much older than them. Probably a solid 7 years older than them. Maybe closer to 10. He was like, he's a decent bit older. They're like young adults and he's in his like early 30s.
Yeah.
And that plays into a lot coming up.
Yeah.
But so, yeah. And then, of course, what happens, though, they're cheering on their auntie as she's on ESPN and she whiffs the final shot.
Well, and it's again, it's beautifully shown to you because they show that when she's willing to make a shot, she gets dead center bullseye every time. But her problem is she will not take a shot unless she knows it's going to be perfect. So she doesn't even let go of the arrow until after the timer went off. So she's automatically relegated to getting the bronze medal instead of, she could have gotten silver if she wouldn't have waited to be perfect.
And a first of many wholesome family moments. You think that Grandpa's going to be mad that they're goofing off instead of doing anything that's important. And he's not. He's like totally amped to watch what happens.
Yeah.
He even makes that reference where he says like, oh, I can't watch. I get too nervous for her. You know, which is just like such an old dad thing to do.
Yeah.
But we'll talk more about what's coming very soon outside of the, what's the river name again?
The Han River?
Han River. But first we have to go to this quick word from our sponsors. And we are back with more talking about The Host. And now that our auntie, I'm going to call her auntie. I'm so bad with foreign names. Ironic.
Yeah, come on, get with the program, man.
I mean, since I have a foreign name, but whatever, not that foreign, you know. But no, but so Auntie unfortunately is relegated to the bronze because she hesitated to release the arrow, and now,
Gongdu has to go down. Dad has to go down to the river because Grandpa isn't upset that he's sitting there goofing off with the granddaughter. He's upset because Gongdu stole the leg of a squid from a customer.
And he didn't even steal it to eat it. He stole it just to be a shit.
Yeah.
And you know, I want to say something that I this is not directly related, but I try to consume a lot of art and think about it a lot. And I've been watching the Starz show Heels, the pro wrestling drama, which I really am enjoying the second season. The first season was phenomenal. But there's a scene where a character steals $20 off of a table at a diner that's cash only. After the guy who was sitting at the table had said, like, can I buy your meal? Because he hears this young guy who's like all muscled. He's a wrestler. He hears this young guy say like, just white toast, please. So he says, how about I buy you some dinner? It's actually a really sweet scene because he says like, you know, no, I'm not your charity case. He's like, hey, I've had days where all I could eat was toast too. And I've had days where I could eat more. I like the days where I could eat more, a bit more. and he's like, what? I just like toast. And he's like, wouldn't trust a guy who doesn't. Just offer. And he says, like, leave me alone, basically. And so then when the guy leaves, he leaves a 20 on the table for his meal, and he comes up and takes the 20. So then as he's leaving with that $20 bill, the waitress catches that guy leaving and thinks he's trying to dine and dash. So she makes him he pays again to her.
God.
And the worst part, the part that makes it the saddest is that she's like super mean about it. She's like, you know, whatever, get out of here. I don't want to ever see your ass here again, you know, all this stuff. And then as he's walking out, the guy feels bad. So he walks up to him and gives him his 20 back. And he's like, I'm really sorry. That was me. I don't know why I took that. And he's like, sure you do. Because you feel like the world owes you something. And maybe, and he's like, and maybe it does. Keep it. It's yours now. But like, I thought that was a really incredible way to look at that. And I think that applies.
Absolutely.
That in a way, it's like he was stealing just for the principle of taking something because he has so little.
Well, I think that's a big part of it. But I think that because we'll talk a little bit about Gong-doo's childhood later on in the movie. And he came from a very troubled childhood. And it's revealed that he had to steal to survive a lot and often.
Well, sure.
And so I think part of it is also just like impulse, like that never left him. Because you talked about how when he's sitting there watching the archery match with his daughter, how he's kind of acting like a kid himself. I think a lot of him is kind of stuck in Arrested Development.
Oh, I mean, I think that's, I don't even think that that's implied. I think that at one point Grandpa says it.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
like flat out says it. So, but yeah, so he gets in trouble for stealing it. And that's the best part, because when he reveals that he did steal it, he still has it.
Right there in his pocket.
It would have made more sense if he had taken it off to eat it right then and there. But he didn't. He took it to keep it, just so that they couldn't have it. That's not nice.
No. So yeah, and again, it's the visual storytelling of just like telling you all of the good, bad, and the ugly of these different characters. So Gong-doo goes down to the river to apologize to the customers and to give them a new squid and like give them a couple beers. And everybody notices like a big dark shape in the river. And
I mean, this is so that people understand, this is not a small river. The Han River is a massive waterway in a major metropolitan area with huge concrete walkways on either side. There's boating, there's fishing, there's people working, and there's people playing. I mean, it's a congregational space.
Yeah.
That's why their shop is right next to it, because people like to hang out there.
People are there all the time.
And they're hungry and they want, whatever. And before I forget, I do want to mention that the other thing I really liked was that Grandpa makes it very clear that he appreciates and respects his customers, because he mentions he's like, you took one of the tentacles and you took one of the longest ones. There's something special about when you get a squid just for you, those two longest tentacles, like you look forward to them, even though they don't taste different.
Yep.
And I really appreciated that, because that's true. Like, if you want to be good in business and if you want to be a good person to your customers and stuff, you have to think about how you would feel.
Absolutely.
Every time you sell something. And I really liked that. I just like that whole thing where he's talking to me. He's like, how would you feel if you didn't get all of the tentacles when you ordered a squid? And I just thought that was good. And then when we find out later the life that little shop got them out of, you realize why he has that mentality.
Exactly. Because
in my opinion, in life, you can go one of two ways. You can go into that mentality, or you can become a little prick.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
So, but no. So now they're seeing the big dark shadow in the water of the Han River, and everybody's gathering around, and they start throwing things at it.
Yeah.
Because we're all the same. All people are the same. That could have been, the Ohio River on the Kentucky side, and we'd be throwing beers at it.
No, and that's part of why this movie is so brilliant, is because the humor is played so well into the whole story. And that scene where everybody is like throwing beer cans and like snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, I've seen this phenomena before.
Like, by doing it.
By doing it. Yeah. Like,
you're like, hey, look at that weird duck.
You
start
throwing
like
things that
won't
things
hurt
at
it. Yeah, you're just throwing things that won't hurt it. You're just like, I just want it to look at me. I want to know.
Like, why is it beak look weird like that? So then after this really funny kind of like humanizing moment, then something starts to come out of the water. And at first you think it's like a tentacle or something, but it grabs somebody and it drags the person into the water, and then all pandemonium breaks loose. And that's kind of a moment. At first, Han-doo gets caught up with the crowd, and he's running, and he's just trying to survive and just get away. But then something switches, and you can kind of see him snap out of it and stop sleepwalking through life for a minute.
And I'd mentioned to you when we were watching it, because it was my first time watching it, that I've noticed that's a common angle in animes, which of course they're Japanese, but it's a similar part of the world. And I've noticed that a lot of really great anime stories are about somebody who has gotten so complacent that they're kind of sleepwalking. And then something wild happens and everything is different in that moment. And I think that's probably a common trope, but I definitely, in the recent animes I've watched very recently, it seems like that is often the case. You have like, especially a young man character who's just kind of doing whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like, never mind, you're flung into another world now. And you're like, oh, shit. You know,
well, I guess I need to deal with that.
But no, so you're right though. He like wakes up.
Yeah. And the great part is when he wakes up, he becomes a very good version of himself because he's trying to help other people. And he ends up teaming up with somebody that is revealed is an American soldier. And the soldier's like, we've got to try to kind of like distract this thing. So at first, both of them work together to pick up like one of those big traffic signs that's like got a cement bottom.
Yeah. It's the cement that would usually be under the dirt to keep it balanced. Yeah.
So it takes both of them and they're able to manage to kind of like hoist it up and injure the monster. But it all kind of backfires because then the monster just grabs the American soldier and just starts flinging him around like a rag doll.
And I want to say, I mean, this movie did a lot of things right, but that guy was Australian. I don't care what you say. I didn't have to be told who he was. I saw the guy and I was immediately like, that's an Australian.
You did say that.
Well,
is he an Australian? Is the actor
Australian?
Australian?
Know. He was Australian to me, and that's all that really matters. Well, you got to also keep in mind, the reason I would also assume he's an Australian is they're like right next to Australia.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's when you said that. I'm like, well, that would make sense that you would get an Australian to play him because he's such a small role. Like, why would you fly over an American all that way when you've got Australia like in your backyard?
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that because later on, Paul Lazar shows up, and he's one of my favorite American character actors. And I was like, wow, they flew like a guy that's cast as like random dudes and stuff. I mean, like, we'll talk more about character as a minute, but I was like, wow, they flew him all the way to Korea for this movie. Wow. That tells you Bong Joon-ho is like really knows his movies and his actors. That he'd be like, I want that guy who was, he was in Snowpiercer as well. He put him in Snowpiercer as well. I want that guy. He was on that episode of Law and Order and also in The Silence of the Lambs as a small character. But that's that's really that. He was in Lorenzo's Oil. Oh yeah, he was in that. Man, that's the thing is they're in everything. Anyway, character actors. But anyway, so yeah, they're trying to fend this thing off, and they're throwing this thing, which actually was not a dumb idea. That sign would be really heavy, and could pack a wallop. So I'm sorry though, I cut you off really bad because that guy's Australian. I don't care what anybody says, even him. I don't care what his parents say. He's Australian.
You're never going to be convinced otherwise.
I cannot be convinced otherwise. Wake up, sheeple.
So anyway, the monster, they managed to injure it to kind of like hurt its tail, but the monster then grabs the American soldier and starts flinging him around like a rag doll. And, Gang-do, to his credit, all on his own, manages to pick that big sign back up and wallop the creature again, and this time got like blood all over his face, but that just made the creature more upset, so it totally killed the guy and just ran off.
Yeah. And that was an interesting moment because the guy was being so like obscenely brave. We're both wrong. He's Canadian, and
damn it. Well, that's like the Australia of the Northern Hemisphere, right?
I'm not going to touch that one. I kid and taunt so many nationalities per show. We're going to let that one go. So our faux Australian, faux American military man, he gets horked up.
Yeah,
that's the way I describe when hen wolf eats. So I figure that's fair to describe how this thing eats. And now we're just back to the full-blown pandemonium.
Yep.
Because we had taken a little break from it where you were only seeing people running by. And I want to mention when they were fighting it, they weren't just fighting it, they were like trying really hard to save people from it,
too.
too.
Absolutely.
It was very, very brave because there was a part where they were trying to open a door to get people out because the thing was coming through the other side of a trailer. And I think at one point, didn't he like look over at main character's name? The dad.
Gang-do.
Gang-do. Thank you. I will know it by the time we're done. I will have it down pat, and then it'll be over, and we'll never talk about the host again on a podcast. But Gong-do, he like turned to Gong-do, who was just like, well, I don't know what to do, and I can't help anyway. I'm dumb, which is not. I'm not saying that's who he is. I'm saying that's what he thinks about himself.
Yes,
he's like, I'm too stupid to help anyway. But he like turns to him, and I think at one point it says like, I can't save these people without you. Grab it. Or something like
because he needed his help getting the latch open so that they could let the people out. So it was very interesting for such a brief interaction how once Gong-do had somebody that was treating him as being competent, he actually was able to be competent.
Yeah, and let's not even I don't want to over-examine or under-examine the part where he lifted that thing up all by himself when he realized that when he was trying to save the guy who had been saving everybody.
Exactly.
He just lifts that thing up, and I mean, that thing's friggin' heavy.
It's gotta weigh like at least 200 pounds.
So now let's get to the sad part of many.
Yeah. So after Namjoon, auntie, loses her match, Hyun-seo is outside pouting because her auntie just lost. And she doesn't notice, but whereas normally the area leading up to the river is like busy and bustling and full of people, there is nobody. And then she just hears screams approaching from the distance. And then she sees this monster just kind of like barreling down and chasing all these people. And luckily, Gong-do manages to be at the forefront, and he grabs her hand and just starts running. But he fumbles and falls to the ground, and he thinks he's caught her again. He thinks he's grabbed her hand again. But then when he turns around for a moment to look, it's another kid.
It's a different little girl, which is a really unsettling reveal. That's kind of hard to imagine how it would happen in real life, but at the same time it's like they were depicting heavily the chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, Korea is not known for their cities having a lot of room to stretch your legs. So when everybody is going into full chaos mode, running for their lives, it's the only way I could describe the crowds running was thick.
Yes.
It was thick with people.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, though, because he looks back and realizes he's pulling the wrong little girl, which, of course, if it was me, I would have thrown her closer to the monster and be like, no, I wasn't trying to help you. No, but
you're the distraction.
Don't have to run faster than the monster, just faster than you. But, bear logic. But so then he looks back and his daughter is way further back and the creature is gaining.
Yeah.
Like pretty much already to her by the time we see it. And that was the first of many times this movie made my stomach get really, really tight.
Yeah. Because just the look on her face when it grabs her and starts running off with her, that's bad enough. But then you look at Gong-do's face and the defeat and the horror is just, very, very well portrayed. The actor did a great job, but it just kills you on the inside. So that all happens, and then we're at a big,
it's a basketball court.
It's a basketball.
Probably a school.
Well, I think it's a school, and on the Wikipedia page it said it was that the government had put together the mass funeral. But so it's a big mass funeral for everyone that was lost during the monster attack. And it's just hundreds of people's pictures lined up on the wall.
I think it was like 20.
It looked like more. Maybe it was 20, 30, 50.
20 is a lot. 20 is a lot of dead people, actually.
No, then
it's okay.
But it was a lot of people, though.
You were just having a little hyperbole fun. That's all. And you know how I am. I'm horrible about when hyperbolic numbers are the thing I always crack about.
Yeah.
But no, and they're doing, and this is not meant to sound culturally insensitive, which means it will. But they're, from what I understand, in Korea, the tradition is that loss and mourning are very loud. Like people scream and cry Like it's normal. Like they would sit in place and just scream and cry and yell. Because I mean, a lot of the people missing or that are gone were children and husbands and wives, and so they're like screaming and rocking back and forth and yelling and crying. And then we get back to the Park family, and well, we'll have to wait until after this break to tell you what they have to say. Whew, this gets heavy here, guys, but we'll be right back after these messages. So now the Park family are in a mass mourning space. I don't know how else to describe it. And they're bickering.
Yeah, and it's set up so phenomenally because it starts out and it's just grandpa and dad, and they're sitting there weeping and wailing and crying in front of the picture of Hyun-soo, and then Nam-jun, the sister, comes, and she has very clearly come like straight off the taxi or whatever from the competition, because she's still in her tracksuit. She's still got her bow and arrows with her. Yeah. And she's just got a medal in her hand, and she comes
a bronze medal.
A bronze medal. But she comes and she just her face, like you can see how devastated she is, but her composure, she's the only person who in the moment is maintaining her composure right now. And she puts the bronze medal in front of the picture, and grandpa starts wailing, she brought you her medal, she brought you her bronze medal, and this was all for you and all that. And then Nam-il stumbles in and he's got a liquor bottle in his hand.
I thought it was a beer.
Maybe it was a beer.
Because beer's not liquor, right?
Beer's not liquor.
I needed lessons on adult.
Maybe it was a beer.
It looked like a beer.
It could have been
like one of those Asian beers,
Yeah.
Either way, doesn't mean it was the only one he had.
It did not appear to be the only one he had.
I could smell him through the screen. My God.
So he comes stumbling in, and he starts screaming even louder than the rest of the family. And then he turns to Gong-do and says, how could you grab another kid? How could you not even know, like, this wasn't your daughter? And takes a swing at him, and they start, like, very lazily boxing. And then they both fall to the floor, and they're squirming around on the floor, like wrestling with each other.
And then at one point when they separate, he drop kicks him. I just remember because I reacted, like, I laughed out loud because he literally, like, gets to his side, and then he just kind of jumps up and hits him with both his feet. And you're just like, what the? And the thing is, I went to professional wrestling school, and drop kicks, the funny thing about drop kicks is they don't feel great to the person giving them because you hit the ground.
Ooh.
So it's just very funny, like, that he drop kicks him. That's like the most emotional, like, screw you, whack.
Well, and it's great because you can see, you really get the family dynamic, because you've got grandpa trying to separate one of the brothers. You've got the sister trying to separate the other one. They're both like at each other's necks. Everybody's screaming and hollering and wailing, and he drop kicks the other guy. And then it's great because then again, this movie, like, the humor just is perfect to break the tension, because then somebody comes in and asks, who parked your car somewhere? This lady's like, oh, that's my car. And then the official starts chiding her, like, why would you park there? There's people in mourning. Like, why would you park there? And she's sitting there, sorry. While this family is sitting there screaming and wailing and punching each other.
Yeah. There's just so much going on. and in Parasite, I remember there being a lot of juxtaposition of the mundane with the absurd.
Yes.
And I love that. I think it's an excellent way to get across the way I think life really is.
Absolutely.
So I've always thought that, the absurd and the mundane exist right next to each other. Because honestly, otherwise you don't really understand how absurd something is unless you have the mundane to compare it to.
I like the way you think.
So, but yeah, so it's like they're talking about, like, why would you park your car there? And she's like, I'm so sorry, while they're literally fighting like little kids and sobbing.
It's pretty great. And you feel for the family, but again, you have to laugh because it is so absurd.
Yeah.
And just not just that scene, but the whole situation. And it keeps getting more absurd the more you go into it. So they're sitting there screaming and crying, and they finally stop punching each other, at least. And then another government official comes in, and he's in full PPE, like from head to toe.
Yeah, he's wearing a like a
biohazard suit,
like a beekeeper outfit.
Yeah.
He's got the big hood on and the filtration system and everything.
And so he comes and, he says it's a matter of national security. Anyone who came into close contact or was touched by the monster, identify yourself. And Gong-do starts to comply, but then Nam-il, who's a troublemaker and used to be, like, when he was in college, it's kind of revealed throughout the movie that when he was in college, he was a political protester. So he's a bit of a shit stirrer. He tells his brother, like, no, like, you don't have to identify yourself to them. And he starts, like, riling the people up. Like, if they're going to try to make you identify yourselves, like, you should tell us what's going on first. And the official tries to show people on the news, and nothing's on the news yet. So
he literally says, like, hold on, the news will explain it. And he's, like, flipping through the channels going, like, hold on. Okay, it's not on yet.
And so then a whole bunch of government officials and probably people from the U.S. Army come in and just start escorting people away. And so they take the Park family away.
And people do raise their hand initially to say that they had been exposed.
So they take those, they start rounding those people up, and they take them to a hospital. And nobody at the hospital knows what's going on. And like the U.S. Army is there, and they're trying to take over, but the doctors are like, we don't know what's going on, and we don't even have the staff to do what you're asking us to do. I don't know what you expect. And then the Park family is sitting there, like, trying to ask questions, like, can we go home now? Like, what's going on? So it's just this absolute chaos.
Yeah.
We find out that they believe the Korean government and the U.S. government believe that the monster is connected to a deadly virus.
And this, it should be mentioned, this is on the tail end of the SARS pandemic in Asia, which I feel like a lot of people have completely forgotten about. But it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was bad.
I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, it's hard to, like, we're talking about pandemics, we're like, oh, it's so bad. It wasn't 2020.
No, but still, it was very harmful to
it was
a lot
incredibly severe to Asia, to the Asian nations.
Yeah.
For sure. Southeast Asian nations. And it should also be mentioned that our lead character, what was his name again?
Gong-do.
That he not only came into contact with the creature, but when he smashed its tail with that big block, he got blood splattered from the creature right in his face, which would be considered extreme exposure.
Yes.
Like the blood might have gotten into his blood stream through his mouth, nose, or eyes. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to mention that too.
Yeah. Well, that's why they put him into...
Oh, yeah, they put him in, like, it looks like they're putting him in luggage. Yeah. And the way they zip him in it, too, he's just like, what are you doing? And they're just like, dum-de-dum-de-dum.
Yeah, it's just all matter of fact.
Oh, and that's one thing I love is that everybody doesn't know what they're doing. All they know is they sure are going to do it. Yeah. That's a common trend in this. We're not making a joke about, the movie's cultural differences. No, like, it's
that's part
literally
of
what the movie's about, is the fact that these people don't really know what they're doing or why.
Yeah, they're just doing it because someone told them to do it.
And not even necessarily someone who knows anything, just someone.
Yeah, just somebody who happens to be a little bit higher up the ladder told them to do something, so they're doing it.
Yeah.
So that night, while they're in quarantine, Gong-do gets a call on his phone from Hyun-so, and she's, the phone call is breaking in and out, but she's explaining, like, she's alive. She's not necessarily safe, but she is alive, and she's in a sewer somewhere, but it's a really deep sewer, so she can't get out.
Yeah, it's really big.
Really big.
It's a really big sewer.
So, of course, he immediately wakes up his family, and they are trying to talk to the doctors and to the American
just to the military
Yeah,
in
just
general,
the
police, the
military,
military,
like-
just anybody with authority to say like, hey, she's still alive.
Exactly.
Because it should be mentioned that tentacle we saw grabbing people turned out to be its tail. And a tail that, I don't know what the word is for a tail that like is used for grappling. It's basically like a hand.
Like prehensile.
Sure.
Yeah,
That sounds like a
prehensile
word.
tail.
Yeah, I like it.
I think that's the word.
But yeah, so I mean, we did not see her eaten. That's why I knew. I've seen enough movies to know I was like, she's not dead. Because we saw people get horked, but we saw her just get grabbed by the tail and go underwater.
Exactly.
So there was an implication that she had drowned or been eaten, but we didn't see anything. And generally speaking, if I don't see someone die in a movie, then I'm waiting for the surprise.
Exactly. So of course, nobody believes them at all. And even though they're trying to explain like you can like coordinate using her phone, you'd be able to find where she was very easily. The army guy just kind of brushes it off. He's like, no, we can't do that. and
they're
moves
also
on.
denying that she even called him and stuff too. I mean, they're not just
And they're
saying
telling
like, we
him
don't
he's
care.
crazy.
Yeah, they're saying that he's going crazy because he was exposed to that monster's blood, and also the extreme grief and the extreme stress and blah 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 blah.
Exactly. So finally, I wanted to double check my notes to make sure that I'm staying on track.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, they're doing a great job. You haven't looked at them yet today, so.
Well, I have seen the movie several times.
I've seen it once. I loved it. So.
So, oh, and again, playing off the humor, I loved when the dad was trying to bribe the cop, but at first the brother was trying to bribe the cop and just totally fumbled the bag. And then
he wasn't even trying to bribe the cop. He was just trying to get the cop to do what they wanted. He was just trying to get them to do what they want. And then the dad comes and bribes the guy. And he just looks at me. He's like, you graduated from college. You don't even know how to bribe a cop. Or I think he used a different word than bribe. I think he was like, you didn't even know how to
like was it blackmail?
No. I felt like it was like, I keep wanting to say the word finesse, but I know that's not the word they use. But it was like, you don't even know how to something a cop. I can't remember the word now. But it was basically like, you don't know how to get a cop to do what you want. You know.
And that was great. So the family manages to escape. They get out in a van, and they get help from a bunch of criminals from like a gang. And that's
a very organized gang.
Very organized, because they're sitting there writing out a handwritten itemized receipt for all of the crime shit that they just did.
Yeah, they bust him out of there. They had to steal a van to get him out. They have
we had to shake the cops twice.
Yep. And they might have seen us, and we had to punch. It was like we had to punch 2 policemen or something.
Yeah.
Like, so they had all these additional charges. And this great part was like, we take cash and credit card. And then they're like, we take the credit card.
Yeah, they just took it. They just took it.
It's just theirs now.
And it was beautiful because you've got the grandpa there, and he is literally giving up every single worldly possession aside from the little shop.
Yeah.
To get his granddaughter back, or not even get his granddaughter back, get a chance to find his granddaughter.
Yeah.
So I thought that was just beautiful. So while he's sitting there and kind of haggling over the price of everything with these criminals, his kids are in the van and they're watching a newscast, and it's talking about the American soldier who was injured but then suddenly passed away very tragically.
Shortly thereafter, the one that we were talking about, the Canadian one.
The Canadian one.
Australian,
That's actually
American.
Australian, but he's American. And they're talking now about how there's probably, they're probably going to have to use something they call Agent Yellow, which is like this experimental... They describe
it's a biotoxin.
Yeah, it's a biotoxin. Mm-hmm. That's the word that they would use to kill the monster and then just disinfect the Han River of whatever virus is going around.
And it was very subtle.
Yeah.
Agent Yellow, Agent Orange. Very subtle.
Very, very subtle.
Agent Orange went great. Just spray it all over
Oh
Asia.
yeah, there was no repercussions
not
there
a
whatsoever.
single one, and not for anybody either.
No.
I mean, we're pretty sure that's how my grandpa died. Was Agent Orange.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, like 36 years later.
Yeah, but still,
Catches up with you.
it gets you eventually.
But yeah, so they're basically saying like that's something that's important to keep in mind is it's been shown time and time again by this point in the film that no one understands what's going on. No one knows where the monsters come from. Nobody knows what's going on with this virus, but they already have a solution.
Yeah, which is very convenient.
I would call it mortifying. I would call that very scary that they already are talking a solution when it doesn't seem like they even fully understand the problem. Not at all.
No. But they know how to fix the problem they don't understand.
I mean, I think that poison gas biotoxins are always the solution. That's why I got fired from my job at Arby's. So,
oh, that was a wild time.
that was something, you know. It was the intercom wasn't working, so I was just started spraying experimental biotoxin everywhere, and before you know it, I'm in prison. So, but it's okay because they let you podcast from within your cell. Thank goodness. Anyway,
that was a wild tangent.
I'm being goofy. So, so now they're they're part of the package deal they got from the criminals is they got a vehicle and they got suits like PPE suits, so that they look like they're some of the people doing the research and cleanup.
Yes,
but they're the wrong color, which I like. They know answer that right away. They're like, these are not the right color, and then it's like we're from another group,
from another team.
Yeah, we're from another team, and now their plan is to go beyond the blockades to start looking for the little girl.
Yep. So they managed to bribe somebody to get down by the river, and it's kind of cool as they kind of juxtapose it, because as the Park family is looking for their lost child, we just kind of see off to the side are two little kids, just no adults around, just two random little kids. And for just a few minutes, the movie follows them.
And by little kids, we mean one who's probably 7 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
And the other's probably 13.
Yeah.
12, 13, maybe 14. I think 12 or 13.
Yeah, I think 12 or 13. Yeah. Puberty hadn't quite kicked up or kicked on quite yet. But so these little kids, they're wandering around and they're talking about how hungry they are. And they actually find Grandpa's stand and they start raiding it. And the youngest one, he's getting ready to take like some of the money. And the older sibling says, no, like you can't do that. Like part of this tradition that we have here in Korea is if you steal the food, then it's part of a ritual. But if
you didn't write down the name of the ritual?
I didn't. I forgot. And I even tried Googling it, but I couldn't find it. So part of the ritual is as long as you're stealing food, then it's the right of the hungry.
Right.
So the kids manage to grab some food to eat, and they start wandering along the river, and then the monster comes and horks down both of them and runs off.
And they're Sejin and Seju, by the way. I found that when I was looking at the information about their characters. So Sejin and Seju.
Mm-hmm. And Seju is the youngest kid, and he's the one that survives. And when the monster kind of regurgitates him up, Hyun-seo finds him and comforts him and kind of keeps him distracted from realizing that his older sibling is dead.
Yeah.
And that was cool because you really do see her personality start to shine and see how, like, what a huge heart that she has.
Yeah, but also quite the brain.
Yes.
Yeah, she's very intelligent as well.
Yeah, very resourceful. There's kind of a bit of a montage then of the family like trying to find Hyun-soo and kind of going around and just trying to find every single really deep sewer.
Yeah, no, that is later on they reference what a foolish idea that was to just check every sewer when there's a lot of sewers.
Exactly.
An immense amount of sewers.
It's almost like they're next to a river or something.
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Well, it's almost like they are just a city, therefore they have
well,
a sewer
that too.
system.
That too.
I'm just saying, you know.
But it's interesting because during that montage, Gong-do, either he's sleeping or he's running behind the van like in the fumes.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid that if he's got the virus that he's going to get his daughter sick, so he's trying to like fumigate himself. And that's after that little montage is when Grandpa kind of explains a little bit more about Gong-do.
And this really hit me.
Yeah,
really
you got
connected
very
with me.
emotional during this scene.
Well, you know, I spent a lot of time being the only kid with my parent.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty powerful stuff. So go into it and we'll talk about it.
Well, again, Grandpa doesn't really explain why his wife left or where she went.
Right.
But it is very clear that she didn't die. She did choose to leave. And she left him with a little tiny kid. And he doesn't out and out say like whether he does say that he was always out late. And it's kind of implied, I think, to me that he was like working all the time. But also he didn't have a lot of money for food. So it could be that he was working and then he was going out drinking. But either way, he was not home for his child.
Right.
And that's why Gong-do had to resort to this stealing ritual all the time, is because he didn't have any food at home. There was no one there to care for him. And so he would just go out and steal whatever he could find. And Grandpa like blames himself because he recognizes that because he was kind of an absent parent at that time, that Gong-do didn't get the right nutrition. And so he's kind of mentally stunted a little bit.
And that's the most parent thing in this. And we'll get into this deeper because this is probably going to get really emotional, to be honest. But first we have to go to a quick word from our sponsors and we'll be right back. So now we get into a little bit more of Bong. What was his name?
Gong-do?
Yeah, what was it?
Gong-do.
Gong-do. I was close.
You were very close.
Gong-do and his father, because his father is talking about, really lamenting about the childhood that he had, that he gave him, and how he was constantly stealing from the organic farmers nearby in order to eat enough. And this is a part that really clicked with me because a lot of the time that I grew up, it was just my mother and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed as I got a lot older that anything not great, she blamed herself for. Even if it wasn't her fault. You know, like my father's not a great dude and I haven't spoken to him in forever. I probably never will speak to him again. And my mom will sometimes get emotional, and I feel like, I don't know if I should share this, but she'll get emotional sometimes and like tell me she is sorry she picked him as my father. And it's like, Mom, you can't blame yourself for that.
Yeah.
You just can't. Like, you are the best mom there ever was. You know, like, you did your part right.
Yeah, he just didn't live up to his end of the bargain.
No, he's a chachinko. You know, but like you're great. And that's kind of the vibe I got from that story, because he starts saying that he thinks malnutrition is the reason why in his words, he said he falls asleep like a rooster with the flu.
Yeah.
You know, that he'll doze off and stuff. He thinks that his brain didn't connect properly due to malnutrition, which could be possible, but more to me sounds like the mind wheels turning of a parent who's worried that they didn't do things right.
Yeah.
And that was why it hit me so hard, because I really felt that level of humanity.
Yeah.
From that monologue.
No. It really does it really does kind of reveal more of the family dynamic, because now it's not just like this kind of goofy grandpa. You really see like the father that he was at first and the father that he grew to be.
Yeah.
Because his younger kids are, they're not super successful, but they're at least not falling asleep at a snack stand on the Han River.
Yeah. I mean, and he references, because remember what starts him saying that conversation, he says like, you shouldn't, losing your child is the worst feeling in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be saying things like, why did you grab the wrong kid? Or why are you falling asleep? Like, just cut him a break is basically what he's saying to him. And then he starts saying, cut him a break. And he's like, besides, anything that's wrong with him, it's me. I made all the bad things about him so.
Yes.
And that's what just punched me in the heart, like super, super hard, but also made me adore this film.
Yeah.
Very, very much. Because that's a level of honesty that makes you really connect with a story.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the kind of thing that makes you connect with a story that's literally in another world. I mean, my life is not that like a South Korean person's life. I mean, there are many things that are the same and there are many things that are different. But I hear that and I immediately go, parenthood. I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I totally get it. We all worry that we're not doing enough for the people we love, and we all blame ourselves for a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's part of the human condition.
Well, and that's also where we start to realize that that's why there's a divide between the kids, because one kid grew up, probably had him too young himself, wasn't ready for the kid, didn't take good care of him until he was probably a teenager.
Yeah.
These other kids got treated well. They got to eat well. They got to live well. They got to go to college. They got to get, archery instructions.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing. And there's that old saying, being the first pancake.
Yeah.
You know that saying?
I never heard the first pancake. I always heard that the first child was always the guinea pig.
Well, I mean, that's not, I guess if you eat guinea pigs, but no, first child is, the reason they call the first child the first pancake is when you make pancakes, how often does the first pancake not turn out right? Because you're figuring out how hot the skillet is. You're figuring out how much butter you want to use.
Yeah. Yep. No, I like that.
The first time I heard that in recent memory, aside from like folksy wisdom from my mother's side of the family, was in the film Pieces of April, which is a phenomenal movie about a Thanksgiving that I recommend everybody watch. Pieces of April, so good. And I love that movie, but there's a part where she's like, I got to keep it really, I don't want to go on a tangent about another great movie, but she is cooking Thanksgiving dinner for her parents. She lives in a crappy apartment in New York. Her oven doesn't work the morning of Thanksgiving. So now she's using the oven of other people in the apartments, but all of them have their own dinners to cook. So she's like, they're like, I could give you 2 hours of my oven. And that gives you 2 hours to find another oven, to cook your turkey the rest of the way. So she's in this wonderful little black couple's apartment, and they're just the sweetest people that she never had met before in her building. And they reference at one point when she kind of talks about how like her younger siblings get along fine, but she does not. And they say like, first pancake. And then they explain that concept. It's like, you're the first pancake. It doesn't turn out right because you don't really know what you're doing yet.
Yep.
And love that. I love that. So Pieces of April, for the love of God, go see it. We can't talk about it on the show because it's not horror. It is a beautiful drama, and I love it. Very, very much.
You could adapt it to be a horror movie.
How about I just adapt you into the floor? No, but
so anyway, back to the host.
The what now?
So the next day, the Park family is kind of trekking along the Han River, and they encounter the creature again. And luckily, they're armed, and so they start unloading all their weapons. And Gong-do, he thinks he's sitting there counting his shots in his shotgun, and his dad is unloading his own shotgun in the creature. And Gong-do, when his father like runs out of ammunition, he throws his shotgun at his dad as like a last ditch effort. But unfortunately, he had like miscounted the shots. And so now his dad doesn't have any ammunition whatsoever. And when he pulls the trigger and then realizes as the creature's barreling down on him.
And they do a great reveal where Gong-do, I got it right?
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
Gong-do, after his dad pulls the trigger and it clicks, we look down at Gong-do's hands and he was counting his father's rounds as well.
Yes.
Which is something somebody who is mentally deficient would not be able to do.
Exactly.
He's not a dumbass.
He's just not quite all there.
I was gonna say he just plays one on TV. So, but yeah, at that moment, when he realizes he's out of bullets, all he can think to do is turn to his kids and signal for them to run.
Mm-hmm.
Because the monster's gonna get him.
Yep.
And it does. And I can't tell you how, if you watch this movie and don't feel an incredible loss when that man dies, then I got nothing for you.
I think at that point you should probably check your pulse.
I mean, how would you do that if you're dead? Because you're definitely dead. That killed me. I mean, that really, really hurt me. Because I just started to understand him. And speaking of, that's the cruelty of life.
Oh, yeah.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you lose somebody right when you feel like maybe you started to understand where they fit in your life or where they fit in who you are, especially family. And that was, in a way, it felt like they were taking away my grandpa.
Oh, absolutely.
So that was rough but powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next part is after he's definitely dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after we confirm he is not a fake out death. The brother and sister. Oh yeah, she went to take a shot at the monster at one point. That was during this? She went to take a shot with her bow and arrow.
Yeah, because there's several times throughout the movie where she'll go to take a shot and she hesitates.
No. This time her brother said, "What are you doing?" Like he basically discounted that it could even help.
Yeah,
the younger brother. Yeah, he's just like, "What good is that going to do?"
Yeah,
it's
like
dude,
you're
she's
not
one of the
shot.
greatest archers in the world. My God, have a little respect for your sister. You know, like God. But that's the point.
Exactly.
But so they run, the younger brother and sister, and then Gong-do.
Yeah,
doing so good. Gong-do is getting ready to run as well, and he checks his father and he puts a newspaper over him just out of respect, cover his face, and he starts to leave, and then when the police come and catch up with the body, he doesn't.
Yeah, he can't bring himself to
he can't leave him, and I felt like that was everything you needed to know.
Yeah,
he couldn't leave him, and that's a really beautiful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, a traditionally beautiful moment getting caught by the police,
but
stuff.
It showed the level of loyalty that Gong-do had for his family.
Yeah, because his other siblings were fine with just getting out of there. And I mean, that was their father's wish.
Yeah.
So it's not about letting down or disappointing your father. It's about the fact that Gong-do could not.
Exactly.
He could not leave his dad. He just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
He just plain could not.
Yep.
what a punch in the gut.
Yeah, it was tough. It was very tough. And just when he is crying and putting the newspaper over his dad's face, and it just rips your heart out. Yeah. And that's one of the things is this movie will go from being rather funny and comic and lighthearted to just like totally ruining you emotionally in the very next scene.
Which is why I love it.
which makes it great.
That's my jam.
So now we know that Gong-do's been caught by the police, and so that means that he's going to be getting sent over to the army.
Yeah, because they want to investigate if he has this viral infection that they're so afraid of.
Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, the younger brother, Nam-il, he meets up with an old friend of his because he still thinks that there's a way to find Hyun-soo by using her cell phone signal.
Right.
So they go to a office building, and his friend is kind of just casually making conversation, asking like, oh, well, how's your sister? Where is your sister? And he's like, oh, well, we're traveling separate because it's safer that way. And Nam-il is kind of sitting there at the computer, and he manages to get the computer working, and he's looking at this map, and his friend goes off into the other room.
Well, before that, though, I want to mention that he asks his friend, like, is it possible to find out where that call came from? He's like, oh, easy.
Yeah, like why didn't you call me? Why didn't you call me first?
Why didn't you call me immediately? Yeah, but I love that he's like, this is not a difficult thing to do at all. We'll just figure out where the phone call came from. But yeah, so now his friend begins to quietly wander to the other side of the office building, and you take it from here. But like, this is some stuff.
So, his friend had mentioned that like it's good that you're traveling separately from your sister because the government's got a bounty on your head, basically. So when his friend starts wandering to the other end of the office building, you get a little suspicious, and then he goes to a room, and the room is crowded with probably, I think, police. Like it looked like police officials, or
I thought that they were people he worked with. That were like selling him out because they were.
He worked with.
I thought that they were. I thought
it could be
because they weren't like at battle stations. They were all just kind of hanging to the side, which made me think that they were all like waiting to find out if this was going to pay out, because there was references to the fact that like all of these business professional people are friggin' broke.
Oh, I missed that. No, yeah, you're probably right.
Because he mentions he's in like a crazy amount of debt.
Yeah,
in passing. That's the sense I got, was that they had all left their desks to make the guy feel like he was secure.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that was the way I read it.
I think you're right.
Was that they wanted the office to be empty so he'd think that there was only his friend there. When in reality, they were all there ready to cash in. They were all there because
they all wanted in on that action.
Yeah, they couldn't have been cops because they were asking each other, like, what is the reward up to at this point?
That's right. Yeah. So, his friend kind of says like, well, we can't get a hold of his sister, but at least we've got him. So let me go back out there and kind of start to finesse him. But Nam-il, like, again, when he was in college, he was kind of a shit stirrer. So he starts to notice that the vibes are off. So when the people all start coming out of this adjoining office room, and they're saying basically like, oh, well, you need to stop, like, don't resist, like, we've got you surrounded. And Nam-il just immediately finds a way to cut out the lights and just books it.
Yeah, he like pulls a breaker or something, and then it books out, and they're all stuck behind a locked door. Yeah, he's just like, nah.
Just like, no, I got
that
this.
out quick.
I got this.
Yeah, and that's the moment that you realize maybe he's not a little pansy boy, like he kind of comes off as.
Yeah, because he comes off as being really entitled and like, woe is me. But you start to realize like, oh, he's got more to him as well. Like the whole family does. They're three-dimensional. Yeah. And so you're starting to see his extra dimensions. So he escapes. And he's got Hyun-soo's location. So he knows where to go, but the rest of the family doesn't. And that's one of the big moments then for the sister, Nam-ju, is she's by herself and she's stalking the creature. And that's when she goes to take a shot and she hesitates and it rams into her.
Yeah.
And she goes flying off into like a little ravine thing.
Yeah, it's like a little cubby in the sewer.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
So, again, she doesn't die on camera, so we assume like she's not dead, but we don't know when she's going to come back.
Yeah.
And that's when we go back to Gongdu, and they're getting ready to lobotomize him.
Well, we find that out adorably as he starts chatting with the American military doctor, played by, in my opinion, the legendary Paul Lazar. and I wanted to talk about him a little bit. And I will, right after we get back from this quick break, support our sponsors there who keep us on the scare. So now we're at the point in the film where we're really starting to figure out what people, I was going to say no, but it's really don't know.
Yeah.
And we're introduced to Paul Lazar. In my opinion, Paul Lazar is a legendary character actor. And for those who don't know, character actor means ugly. And I mean, I'm joking, but also for real.
You're not wrong.
There's a saying in show business that character actor for men means ugly and for women means old.
I mean, yeah.
Although there are old men character actors, although they are pretty ugly. But he's been in, I mean, more movies than I could possibly throw your way. Los Locos, 6 Ways to Sunday, Buffalo Girls, Speechless, Trapped in Paradise, which I actually like that movie. A lot of people don't. He was in an episode of Pete and Pete as Bob Oppenheimer. He's known for being cross-eyed. I mean, that's like one of his quirks that shows off is that he is cross-eyed or he has a lazy eye. I'm not sure. I think it's cross-eyed.
I think it's cross-eyed.
And that's just his trademark. Mm-hmm. He started his career in 1983 and ended up having a big deal in 1991 being in Silence of the Lambs. And from there, he's just had an incredible career. And I love him, and seeing him pop up in this movie, I'm sure you noticed it made me perk up and go,
Hey! You did.
I didn't remember his name off the top of my head, but I remember him.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's memorable. So anyway, I just wanted to mention I love Paul Lazar, and he does not disappoint in this role.
No, not at all, because he's so confident that they need to just do what they've been told to do. But when the other scientist, the Korean scientist, is kind of questioning him, like, wait, so why are we saying there's a virus? Why are we doing this? He's like, don't worry about it. That's not why we're here. We're just here to do it.
Yeah, but he is the one that when they tell him what's going on, he's like, well, why didn't you try to tell the police? Why didn't you try to tell the military? And he's like, no one will listen. He's like, oh. Yeah.
And I love that because Gong-do is so desperate that he just says, no one would fucking listen to me. And I tried telling everyone.
Yeah.
And Paul Lazar's character feels for him. He feels bad for him, but he's like, well, anyway, there's nothing we can do. Let's get on with your lobotomy.
Yeah. No, he's just kind of like, well, we got to check this out. And that's where they also reveal that the not Australian, Canadian, that is not actually an American military guy had not died from an infection. He had died during a brain surgery that they were doing to try and figure out if he had the virus, which they're now going to do to our hero.
Exactly. And this is one of the things that was so terrifying because they've got Gong-do restrained down on the operating table and they're literally like marking off on his head
and
where
he's screaming like there is no virus.
Yeah.
They just told me there's no virus. Why are you doing this? And everybody's reaction is this shrug.
Yeah. They just keep on doing what they're good little worker bees.
And I gotta say, what a film for this time in the world.
It really.
And I'm not trying to be one of those friggin' people like, oh, well, but like, it says a lot about the fact that people just sometimes go through the motions because they're supposed to. And then you go, well, why? And they're like, because it's what we have to do. It's like, that doesn't. Yeah, I loved that. I loved that because I felt it. I felt it in my goddamn heart.
Yeah.
So they end up drilling a little hole in his brain and taking out a sample of blood, of fluid.
Yeah.
Right? And afterward, that's when he manages to escape. And he does one of my favorite things I may have ever seen in a movie ever, which is after he's, it's so perfect. After he's like jumped up, and I mean, he just had brain surgery and he's just like, whatever. And I even made a reference that I felt like it was kind of paying off back to the thing where he said like his brain doesn't quite work right.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, he just is fine after that
he's
surgery.
like, oh, you can take a chunk out of it. It's good. I wasn't using that chunk anyway.
So he jumps up, grabs the syringe full of his brain matter, grabs a hostage, and says he's going to inject her with his virused brain matter. And they're all terrified.
Yeah.
Which is even better because we've just established that they know there is no virus. But then they still believe it. I love that. That's so perfect. Such perfectly telling storytelling. Pardon the double telling.
So great. Well, and you nearly lost it when he's got the syringe.
Yeah, and he squirts a little at everybody, and they all jump like, oh! Like, he just squirts a little bit out of the syringe. No, I lost my friggin' shit, man, because that's hilarious. But the fact that they're all afraid, and they know it's not so.
Yeah.
They know that it's not true. And I felt like a lot of this movie was about protesting the way a lot of Southeast Asian countries are managed. Because even the ones that are more democratic than others, they have a lot of issues with silencing dissent. They have a lot of issues with, I mean, again, this is not meant to get political, but the movie takes a dive at it. They were talking, I mean, they made very serious reference to how they weren't happy about how they were treated during SARS.
Yeah.
And the exact same thing happened with COVID over there. They shut everything down, but not really. But like, it was a weird thing. And we never had that over in America until COVID.
Yeah.
But they had that happen multiple times where they'd be like, well, what is this? Like, how is it going to make us sick? Like, how would we catch it? By going to the grocery store. And people would be like, because you will, shut up. You know, and like, it's not, my dear listeners, no matter what your opinion of the world is, it's not about fake viruses. It's not about fake monsters. It's not about fake, creating crimes to make people real criminals when it's faked. It's about fake leadership. Yeah. It's about the fact that leaders are so often completely and utterly full of, I was going to say shit, but let's go with like mule diarrhea. They are so full of it. Yeah. It honestly, it amazes me that when you see a politician that any of them, their eyes aren't brown. Like, it's incredible to me because they're so full of it. And that's the thing. It's managerial theater. It's leadership theater. Yeah. You have to have a solution right now. You have to have a solution right this second. Is it the right one? We need a solution now.
Yeah, that wasn't the requirement. We just need it now.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, what if we do bad? It's like, well, we're the ones who judge how we did. That's an argument I have all the time with people about like when they want to fix something. And I'm like, well, the government did a bad job. So you're saying we should just hope the government gets better. OBKB, I got nothing. So, but I mean, I wouldn't, like I said, not trying to get political, but the movie is making a very serious political statement about the fact that our leaders are sometimes just completely and utterly incompetent. Yeah. And I think that's a valuable lesson because I would say the average person is very intelligent compared to the average leader on this planet. Leadership and government, they're so stupid that they have to convince you of their value. In the private sector, if you have value, then they value you.
It's just
in the leadership segment, all you do is tell people how valuable you are. It's like one step below hip hop artist, because at least their job is to talk shit to get you to like them. I'm just saying, take the Republican National Convention, have them freestyle fight against each other, and maybe I'll get my ass out and vote.
There's the solution.
I am full of solutions. So anyway, I digress. So he manages to get out, although he discovers when he gets out of the operating room that it's like a trailer in the middle of the country. And there's like military for both the US and Korea just like having a cookout. Yeah. Just living their best lives.
Just there. Yeah.
Because their job is to facilitate the security of the operation, I would assume. Yeah. So there's nothing to do.
No.
So they just hang out and go, well, if someone shows up to stop us, we'll shoot them, but
that's not
nobody's
happening
going
yet.
to. Yeah. So
Anyway, you want some kimchi?
and you mentioned earlier that the dad or the grandpa was willing to give up nearly anything to have a chance to look for his granddaughter. But in this moment, knowing his father is gone and knowing that he now owns the snack shop, he is willing to give them the snack shop, not to help him find his daughter, but just to let him go find her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that extremely powerful. That I love that it wasn't like, if I'll give you this, just help me find her. So it was, I'll give you this, just stop not letting me do it.
Yeah.
And realistically, this is a giant evil monster that's killing tons of people, right? So really what he's saying is, let me have a chance to go die trying to save my daughter.
Yes.
And I mean that sincerely. Like, that's a hell of a sentiment.
Yeah.
And that was when the movie was really, basically from the moment the grandfather died, the movie had me completely enthralled.
Yes.
I'm so deeply interested in what's going to happen with these characters and where they're heading. Before that, I was pretty damn interested. But then I was just like, oh my God, because I kept thinking, like, if this ends well, this is like the best friggin' movie, one of my favorite movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
after Gongdu managed to escape, we go back into the sewer with Hyunsu and Siju. That's it. And again, going back to what a clever and resourceful kid she is. Hyunsu takes a whole bunch of clothes from different victims that are down in the pit with them.
Well, and from the beginning, every time a new person came through, whether they were alive or dead, she checked them for anything that could be used to get out of the situation, which is incredibly, incredibly smart.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to give her credit where credit's due.
Oh, absolutely. Because she's
such a
cool little kid.
Absolutely.
So they make a rope and they make kind of like they use something so that it would like latch on to grating up above them. And they throw it and they manage to latch onto the grating, but the rope is too short.
Yeah. Yeah. Math, I guess, was not her strongest skill.
No, well, she's still like 10.
Not her strongest skill.
She's in grade school, so she's still pretty young. But so when the monster is back and it's napping, Hyunsu notices that she could run up its back and use it like a ramp, and maybe she would be able to get out. And so she runs up its back and she jumps and she catches onto the rope and she just kind of dangles in midair there for a few minutes. And then you see her let go of the rope and she's still hovering. And then she just slowly lowers to the ground and you notice that the creature caught her
with its tail,
with its prehensile tail. And it's not going to let her go.
Yeah, it's not going to kill her right now.
Not yet.
But it's not letting her go. Well, and we realized, I think we haven't gotten to the part with the bones yet, or did we skip over that?
We had already seen that. So
okay,
she knows they're going to be eaten eventually.
Well, there's a moment where we're wondering, why is this keeping some people alive in the sewer? And then at one point when it comes to drop off and you think like, oh, here come more people, it just pukes up a bunch of bones and trash and beer cans. And that's when she realizes that they're being saved to be eaten.
Yeah.
Because it's like the first thought I had when we saw it was owl pellets. How owls, a pellet full of the bones and stuff they can't digest. Well, that's kind of what this thing is doing.
Oh, exactly. That's exactly what it's doing.
And that's that's the moment when she realizes we have to build that rope. Because she's like, well, we got to get out of here. Like,
exactly.
It's just a matter of time before we're eaten. And again, talk about telling stories with pictures. That was a mortifying picture, but a picture nonetheless. And one of the moments in the film that solidifies that it is a horror film, that and the fact that there's a freaking monster in it. Because I will say, like, when we were talking about genre at the beginning, I try to be very chill and flexible with genre. But like it's a monster movie. There's a monster, and the monster is important.
It is.
And for the record, like, Godzilla's a monster movie. Godzilla is probably in most Godzilla movies as much as this monster is in this movie.
Yeah.
Because Godzilla movies are often just like court dramas and no, I mean, seriously, they're
no, it's true. It's true.
They're parliamental dramas.
Yes.
Because it's not courtrooms. They're in like congresses and stuff debating what to do. I remember when we went to see Shin Godzilla.
That was so perfect.
It was so good, but I'm just saying, like, that's a newer Japanese Godzilla movie. But like, almost the whole movie is Congress arguing about everything from, where do we move the people that Godzilla has destroyed their homes to, do we call him Godzilla or Gojira?
Like, wait, we need to clear this up. This is really important. We need to take it down in the minutes.
And it's like, people are dying, and you're the leaders. Again, see? Leaders, stupid. The leaders of this nation and of multiple other large nations. And you're just like, well, we have to settle what his name is first. It's like, are you kidding me? And then the best part is they're like, well, we have to settle. And then somebody says, we've settled it. Godzilla and Gojira are both acceptable.
It's like, now we didn't even accomplish anything.
Ta-da! Welcome to government.
Oh, government.
Government. So anyway.
So after getting gently put back down on the ground, Hyun-soo notices, okay, the creature is definitely not asleep, and it then chases her down and chases her to the little hiding spot that she's got with Seju, and they get horked. Again, not eaten, but they get swallowed.
Right.
And the monster starts going on a rampage. And that's when the uncle, Nam-il, just kind of runs into a homeless guy.
Yes. This is so good.
So he kind of runs into this homeless guy, and at first he's trying to talk to the homeless guy, like trying to get his help, like by being nice. And the homeless guy just kind of like brushes him off, and then smashes a beer bottle over his head, and then says, "Yeah, I guess I'll help you. Anyway, I'm bored."
Well, he doesn't just do that, though. He's like going to pay him and everything. He goes like, "You can't buy everything with money," and then he breaks the bottle and says, "But I'm bored, so I'll do it." Like, I don't even think he took the payment.
No, he just wanted to do it because he's bored.
And I can appreciate, like, a guy who lives in the sewers, like, look, money I don't value it at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he ends up teaming up with him for this crazy endeavor to make Molotov cocktails.
They're just sitting there making Molotov cocktails and like walking down the street as they're getting like, and that's again going back to what happens in Southeast Asia. People are there on the river building protests, like starting to protest the use of Agent Yellow.
Yeah, because I guess they don't know what the hell it is or what it could do to everybody.
So they're concerned.
And I want to mention Bong Joon-ho. I always worry I'm going to
Bong Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho. He loves mists and fogs. There's a lot of that in Parasite, and there's a ton of fumigation is the term in this movie. There's tons of fumigation in this film as well. So I thought that was a nice touch, by the way, that it was going to be a yellow fumigation, basically. And so now people are protesting. They're gathering up to protest. And while they're gathering up to protest, they're hearing announcements saying, like, please leave, disperse. We are going to release the gas. Disperse. They said one of the things was like, please walk away until you can no longer hear this message.
Yeah.
And they're not, they're protesting and screaming, and they've got their masks and their signs and their flags, and they are ready to fight. But they're not the only ones ready to fight. Oh no, my dear listener. Because the Park family is ready to fight.
Yep.
They have unknowingly assembled.
Yeah.
On the banks of the river, and now we've got Molotov cocktails. We've got bow and arrows. We've got a man with a piece of his brain missing, but it's fine. And the final showdown of the host is imminent right after these words from our very lovely sponsors. I'm a professional, damn it. I live in a car. So now some kind of shit is about to hit some kind of fan.
What voice was that?
That was a little bit of John Madden, a little bit of a pro wrestling announcer.
No, I get that. Okay, yeah. If John Madden was a pro wrestling announcer.
It's a moment like this when the irresistible force hits the immovable object.
It's only a matter of time before you always go back to wrestling.
Wait, to talking about it or to actually doing it?
Yes.
Oh, God. Okay. So
now we're on to a showdown. Yeah.
The showdown is coming. And I perked right up because I loved, even though it's unpleasant and complicated, I loved everything about how they did the final conflict. Mm-hmm. And there's actually not that much to say about it.
No.
Other than it's good.
It really is. It's... You the only critique you had is they had mentioned at the beginning that any animal that kills a human, you need to tear it limb from limb.
Any animal that kills your family.
Yes.
That the family has the right to hunt it down and tear off all of its limbs, which the grandpa mentions. And I immediately, my ears perked up and I was like, that's got to pay off later.
Yeah, like do that.
And it didn't literally happen, but it kind of sort of happened.
Kind of figuratively.
And we'll get there in just like a minute, really, because it all happens at once now. So now, help me break this down. So we've got the Molotov cocktails are kind of leading the creature around, right? That's number one. And then number two is our father character is just friggin' like holding a pole, right?
Yeah, he's got a pole and he's just kind of swinging around.
Goddamn right.
doing whatever he can. And the aunt comes back.
Yes.
She gets out of the little ditch thing and she comes back. But of course, she's constantly hesitating. And you see everybody's personalities kind of playing out because the dad is just attacking wherever he gets a chance.
Yeah, just stabbing and stabbing and stabbing.
And the uncle is trying to herd the monster so that it's in an advantageous position so that the homeless man can douse it with a whole bunch of gasoline and then the uncle could hit it with a Molotov cocktail and light it on fire.
Right.
And again,
a little old school Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
Sounds really good.
Get it nice and crispy.
Okay, anyway.
Crispy. But the problem is the uncle, as he's getting ready to throw his last Molotov cocktail, and this is all going great according to plan. You forgot
one of my favorite moments, because you like to joke when we were watching it that the creature is inept.
Yes. I said that it's unforgivably inept.
And I felt that the creature was not that. I felt the creature was as inept as any animal.
Mm-hmm.
Like
until this moment.
Any big dumb animal. Until this moment, because as the creature is finally under the bridge where the homeless guy is with the fuel, he starts pouring it on it, and it friggin' looks up and starts opening its mouth to drink it. And that's when I was like, yeah, this thing is as dumb as a sack of hammers, a wet sack of hammers. Like it has no sense. It has no sense for self-preservation other than, ow, that hurts, and hey, I'm hungry.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So it's gulping down what I assume is probably gasoline or kerosene.
Probably, yeah.
And then the uncle has his final Molotov, and as he goes to throw it,
he drops it. He fumbles. He fumbles the bag.
It slips out of his hand.
But it's still got some of the fabric from
the
wick, and it's still burning. And that's when the auntie comes up.
Well, but we don't see her. We just see an arrow stab the wick and pull it up, instantly creating fire arrow. I didn't need any guidance to know what was happening. The moment I saw the arrow stick into it, I went, yes.
Like, yes. Here for it. I'm so here for it.
Flaming arrows are classic anyway.
So cool.
And super duper cool. So she shoots it at the creature.
Mm-hmm. She finally doesn't hesitate. She actually takes this shot. And it's great because the arrow lands dead center in its eye.
Yeah.
Literal bullseye. And of course,
not literal. It's not a bull. It's a
literal monster's eye.
Monster. Fair. I apologize. Continue.
And it goes up in flames instantaneously. And it starts rolling around and, obviously it's an agonizing pain. And that's when the dad comes and he takes his spear thing and he just spears it.
Yes. And I love the way they show him spearing it, because he's holding it like it's pushing, and you can see him like sliding back on his shoes.
Yes.
You know, his shoes are sliding back. And then when it stops pushing and the back of the tube comes off his hand, you see the imprint, because it had been pushing so hard initially, and now it's not pushing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because it may have met its match. And that's when I believe we look into the mouth and see a little girl's hand gripping on one of the teeth of the monster.
Yep.
And when he pulls the hand up, it's his daughter with that little boy in her grip with her other arm.
Mm-hmm.
She is motionless, and so is the little boy. Do you want to take it from there?
So she's motionless. So is the little boy.
Yeah.
And it all starts kind of getting really chaotic, because that's when the government is finally releasing that Agent Yellow.
Yes, and it does make the creature faint.
Yeah.
But then it wakes right back up.
It wakes right back up, and it starts convulsing and shrieking and bellowing. And then fish start popping off of it.
Yeah, it turns out that it's made of a bunch of things.
So it's not just one creature, it's like an amalgam of a whole bunch of different fish.
Absolutely.
From the Han River. So the family is there, and they kind of realize that Hyun-soo has died. And the uncle and the auntie are especially broken up over it, because they've done everything they could, and they've sacrificed so much, and they still weren't able to save her. But what's important is she died with her family, and she didn't die in vain, because she saved this little kid's life.
And that was the thing that hit me, was like when I finally decided I had to ask you if she was dead. Mm-hmm. I had a feeling she was. I mean, and not like right when, I mean, like it was after several minutes of her not moving. I was like, is she dead? Was because I mean, it's a sad thing, but that was the reaction I had. I was like, but she died with her family around. Like she died with all of them together.
Yeah.
And they got that goddamn creature for crossing their family. Mm-hmm. You know, this is like some deep-seated old world honor stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, just filtered through a modern Korean lens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, modern enough. I mean, 2007 was like 87 years ago. But
107, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I always lose track.
So, yeah, it's all pretty emotional. But then we kind of fade to, it seems like maybe 6 months later, because it's the middle of winter.
And I apologize in case we glazed over. We had to confirm that the little boy did survive.
He did survive.
And the dad notices that.
Yeah.
And I believe he goes to check him, and he asks if he knew his daughter.
Yep.
And then we fade. What? You hit your mic thing, huh? Why do I even give you all this nice, expensive gear if you're just going to knock it around?
I don't know. I just like breaking things.
But no, so now we fade to a beautiful snowy night on the Han River. I mean, nearby the Han River. And we're inside. And this is where the movie made me fall in love with it. This is where so spoiler, now I can tell you, this movie became possibly one of my favorite movies of all time, and I only saw it like 4 days ago. Inside of the snack hut, we see the father and the little boy. And it is cozy and homey in the shack. Food is being prepared. They just close. They do have that little tease moment where he has a gun, where he like looks over at the water and he has like the gun ready, and then it's nothing. So he closes the shack, and the television is on, and I'm getting goosebumps. And when he looks at the TV, he sees that they're reporting on like what there's been a full investigation of all the BS that's happened and what really happened. And as it's playing, the little kid, he's like, do you want to watch this or you want to watch something else? And the little kid's like, let's just not watch TV. Let's focus on eating, which I just love that line. Because there's an earlier part too. There's so much to talk about in this movie. It's easy to miss something where he had mentioned that his dream would be to live in a snack shack. He says it's like, I would live here if I could live anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's just full of all, he's like, you can eat all the ramen you want. You can eat all the blah, blah, blah. So yeah, he literally tells his dad, like, to his new father, like, let's just concentrate on eating our food. So he shuts the TV off. They start eating their noodles and dumplings and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And the movie ends. And this is an element of storytelling in film that I've been talking about for a very long time. And that is the way a film ends tells you everything about what you just watched.
Yeah.
The fact that a television set is literally telling us what happened with the monster and the government stuff and all that stuff. They just shut off the TV. They don't care.
Because it didn't matter.
It didn't, because the story wasn't about that. Mm-hmm. The story was about family, opportunity, and about how life has a way of working out.
Yeah.
At least that's what I got from it. I don't know about you.
Well, I definitely think that it's about family. And I think that it's about not only does life have a way of just working out, but sometimes the people that we take for granted the most in our lives are also the people that are there for us. And it's really easy, especially when it's family. But it's really easy to just kind of be like, that's just my brother, or, oh, that's just my annoying sister, or that's just my dad or my mom. And then you realize, like, no, they've got your back the whole step of the way. And that's kind of an important lesson.
And you know what? I'm gonna do something we don't usually do, because I feel like we need a little bit more time to really get into what we think of the movie now. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna go to a quick break. It'll be the last one of the episode. And then we can spend the remainder of however long we want just talking about this. Because I also want to talk a little bit about the background and history and what Bong Joon-ho has said about the film. So we're going to take a quick break. Please stick around. We would love to just talk about this a little bit more. And we'll be right back. So you were saying that you felt like the movie was about family and finding family and stuff like that. Please continue with your thought. I didn't want to interrupt, but
you kind of notice at the beginning of the movie how the three siblings all really take each other for granted. And then by the end of the final showdown, whether they know it or not, they're all working toward each other's strengths and weaknesses. And the only way that they're able to defeat the monster is when, instead of like dogging on each other all the time or infighting amongst each other, or in the sister's case, the sister would just like totally pull herself away. When they would put all of that stuff aside and actually work together, they were actually able to not only defeat their common enemy and accomplish their goal, but also defeat an enemy that the government was having a hard time defeating.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a very interesting, just an interesting theme that the movie had throughout it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's like, to go back to my point about like how the movie ends tells you what the story really was. The story was about these people being a family, including the people who didn't even know each other until the end of the events.
Exactly.
You know, and how a good father will be a good father, even if they lose their daughter. Mm-hmm. You know, in a way, he was carrying his daughter's wish, which was to help this kid.
Exactly.
And in doing that, gave the kid a dream. And the kid is very like he was.
Yeah.
So it's very simpatico and beautiful. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that this movie had a lot of people talk about the politics of it. And Bong Joon-ho had some interesting points. So this will probably shock you to hear, Rachel, but you know where this film was highly touted as brilliant?
Where?
North Korea.
Really? Okay.
Because they lauded it in North Korea because it was so critical of the United States.
Okay. I mean, it was, though.
Bong Joon-ho said, when you look in, and this is a quote, when you look in terms of this, wait, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. He said, quote, "It's a stretch to simplify The Host as an anti-American film, but there is certainly a metaphor and political commentary about the United States," which, hell yeah. A lot of this comes down to the fact that America has been so heavily involved in Korea since the Korean War and Vietnam, but especially the Korean War. But I didn't know this until I was researching. Did you know that the film was inspired by an incident in 2000 where a Korean mortician working for the U.S. military in Seoul reported that he was ordered to dump a large amount of formaldehyde down the drain?
No. Okay.
In addition to the environmental concerns, this caused some antagonism toward the United States. The American military stationed in South Korea had to kind of deal with that nightmare.
Okay.
And that's why in the film they're portrayed as uncaring about the effects of their activities on the locals. And then there is a lot of reference to the fact that it was very clearly Agent Yellow was a thinly veiled reference to Agent Orange, which for those who don't know was a biochemical that was sprayed all over the jungle in Vietnam because I believe it was a herbicide. Mm-hmm. It would kill the jungle so you could find. Yeah, you should get through it. I think it was to transport things. Don't quote me on that. I don't know everything about Agent Orange, but it turned out that it gives people cancer, mesothelioma in particular, but lots and lots of different illnesses. And yeah, so that's something that's really important. And something that the director brought up that I had not thought of is that he mentioned that the film satirically portrays the government as bureaucratic, inept, and essentially uncaring in South Korea. But he also, if you really look at it, he depicts the youth protesters satirically as well as partially heroic and partially self-righteous and oblivious. Yeah. And I do agree. I don't feel like this movie has a side at all. It is just ready to sock anyone in the jaw who's stupid enough to get in its way. You know, and which I love that. I love that so much. And there was something else I found which I wanted to dig into a little bit. So a little bit more about that incident. Yeah. Now I assume this is true. It's on IMDb, so it could be a lie. But it talks a little bit more about the February 2000 incident in Seoul, Korea at the U.S. military base, where a U.S. military civilian employee named Mr. McFarland was ordered to dispose of formaldehyde by dumping it into the sewer system that led to the Han River, despite the objection of the South Korean subordinate. The government attempted to prosecute Mr. McFarland in court, but the U.S. military refused to hand over custody of Mr. McFarland to the South Korean legal system. That is quite, I mean, this is the year 2000, so this is before 9/11. This is when our foreign policy was actually doing okay, and I mean, that's not saying much, but it was doing fine compared to now. But that's pretty big to have somebody commit an act like that and then not hand them over to the legal system. Yeah. I mean, I get it. He's in the military and they're like, nah, like it was on our base, TS, but not hand him over, to not even try to just get them to slap him on the wrist, to be like, we'll hand him over, but you got to say that you're not going to that he's going to get like 6 months. Yeah. And then you're going to count it as time served. Like, we'll let you slap him on the wrist to show that, like, we respect your legal system. Nah. But the government attempted to prosecute him, refused to give custody. Later, a South Korean judge convicted Mr. McFarland in absentia. The public was enraged at the government's inability to enforce its law on its own soil. In 2005, nearly 5 years after the original incident, Mr. McFarland was finally found guilty in a court in his presence. However, he never served the prison sentence, and there have been no sightings of a mutant creature in the Han River yet. So that's the true story that inspired it, and it makes sense. You've got an international incident. I've always said that one of the reasons America, I'm the one who came up with this, but like one of the reasons that America has some rocky foreign relations is because we have so many military bases in so many places. Oh yeah. And it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, we shouldn't be there. On the other hand, a lot of these countries benefit massively from having our military might protecting them. In fact, a lot of Europe, man, I'm talking about a lot of weird politics stuff. I usually I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. But in Europe, many nations, their defense budgets are so low because they have American military bases. So it's like, why bother?
Yeah, like you can't outdo us. So
I mean, we're already there. So anyway, I love this film. It really hit me in the heart. It really made me feel all of the feelings.
Oh my, yes.
And I do think it's one of my favorite movies ever. I ordered the Blu-ray before the credits were done rolling.
Yep.
And it's a heartfelt, soulful monster movie about what really matters in life, which is people and family, not bureaucracies and mutants.
Well, mutants a little bit.
Okay, a smidgen of mutants. But what about you? I've talked a lot about this part. What about you? What do you take from the movie? What do you feel about the movie? I want to hear it.
Well, it's definitely one of my favorites. It's one of the ones that when I was working at Hollywood Video, when I got done watching it, like I said, I watched it, like one or two more times that weekend because I just couldn't get enough. And I love it because it does clearly have the political undertones, but it's not screaming it at you.
Sure.
That's not necessarily the point of the movie. It's just the backdrop of the movie. And I really appreciate that because it gives it so much depth. And I love all of the characters.
Pretty much every character that gets more than like one scene gets a full arc, and you really get to learn what they're all about.
Exactly. You really get invested in them. So
Definitely.
I think that it was amazing storytelling from that angle because you've got just such great characters.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone sees this movie. I think it's one of those movies that, if you're a hardcore horror fan, I think you're still going to get a lot out of it because there are some genuinely creepy and spooky and scary parts. If you're, just a person who just likes movies, I think you're still going to enjoy it because it's such a solid flick. I think that everyone would enjoy it.
I would have to agree. And I also want to mention that it was the most successful theatrical film in South Korean history. It sold several million tickets.
Nice.
According to this, in early September, the film became South Korea's all-time box office leader, selling more than 12.3 million tickets in just over a month in a country of 48.5 million people.
Wow.
By the end of its run in November 8th, the viewing figures came in at 13,019,740.
Damn.
That is a spicy meatball.
A spicy meatball indeed.
I love the movie, and I want to mention Bong Joon-ho has this incredible poetic kind of flourish in how he tells stories, especially visually. Mm-hmm. He doesn't just show you instead of telling you, he shows you in a poet's way that I think is really great.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think this is a movie you'll really enjoy, especially if you have an interesting family. And a lot of people do have interesting families. Not everybody's like you, Rachel. But no, if you have an interesting or complicated family dynamic, then this movie is going to hit home in a good way, I think. Mm-hmm. Because, I couldn't believe that this movie could kill the little girl and leave you feeling relatively good at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very impressive, very ballsy. I don't know. I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And I wish I was a little bit more concise, but I am exhausted and haven't been feeling well today. Now I admit it at the end if you're actually listening this far in.
Let's record for 30 more minutes. Come on.
Okay, fine. So, so back to Heels on Stars. I've been watching that wrestling show. I really wanted to sit down and talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Because I really think it's one worth your time. So if you have Max, friggin' watch it.
Yeah, do yourself a favor.
And then see Parasite if you haven't already, because that's another one. That's not a horror movie. That's just a melodrama with a lot of great comedy in there too. So, but I loved it, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in to Cutting Deep into Horror. And I'm so glad, Rach, that you have joined me on the show. I feel like we've been having a really good time watching and talking about silly movies.
Yeah, maybe.
Medium good time. And we're going to talk about a lot more soon. And do you want to pat yourself on the back one last time that this was your pick and I had never even seen it before?
Yeah. I'm you got to admit, I'm pretty great. I'm pretty great sometimes.
I mean, I cooked dinner. Yeah.
I gotta give you.
That's right. So I went on that one. But anything else you want to say before we get ready to leave this place?
Just don't step on any bones on your way out.
I'll take it. Okay. Cutting Deep into Horror has been hosted by myself, Enrique Couto, and Rachel Rodolfi. If you guys enjoy the show and you want to support it directly, go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can get bonus content, and you guarantee you're supporting the show directly. And speaking of which, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names on our shows. And they are Johnny Nix, Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. If you want to join those names, go to weeklyspooky.com. Show us some love and get ready, because this October is going to be maggoty with the spoopy, with the movies, and with so much more. And if you want to reach out to us and let us know what you think of the films or suggest one, send us an email at weeklyspooky@gmail.com. So until next time, stay out of the sewer. Don't step on any bones. Adios.